If we're talking about Beethoven and this classical music, it's because you can see it helps people to get this potential out in you, right? If we're talking about a Mars program, it's not because we are crazy sci-fi geeks. It's because we're seeing that as it's our mission as human beings, because we are the only thing that, at least we know of, that has the potential to do that. And one person that worked together with this movement very closely, Kraft Erike, says there is an extraterrestrial imperative. We have to do that. And from this standpoint, taking this sort serious, the question is, do we really have a culture to do that? Do we have a culture that enables us to come to Mars? Even posing the bigger question, like most of the people probably that works for our material have a certain idea, yeah, we can come to Mars. So now my challenge is, how do we come further than our own solar system? How do we come to the next solar system? That's a big challenge. And I can tell you, if you want to dance on a spaceship, this dance might fall apart. You'll not even make it to Mars. You will not even make it to the moon. So let's take up this challenge and just get this bigger perspective about it's about us, it's about our nature to develop these ideas and do what we need to do. And probably, Helga, you have something to say to it. I mean, you knew Kraft Erike very well, and I know that was a very inspiring time also for the movement, so probably you can add something to that.
Well, Kraft Erike, I mean, we did several things with him with the Fusion Energy Foundation, but at one time he agreed to make a tour through Germany with us on, to revive the science program, the manned space travel and so forth. And then we had, I think, in 2 occasions, one in Munich and one in Braunschweig, if I'm not mistaken, where the Greenies attacked that meeting. And that was really the point where he said that he had seen exactly that in the 30s. I mean, how can you attack a scientist who wants to develop a Mars program? I mean, it just shows you the total bestiality of the Greenies. And then later, when he unfortunately had cancer, we talked several times at length on the telephone, and he said that he wanted to really express to the Schiller Institute his total support, because he said it's not science which is the problem. Science can be used for good, for bad, but it is always entirely the people who are using that science, and therefore he said that what we say, that you have to have scientific and technological progress, but you have to absolutely combine it with the cultural renaissance of classical culture. And you have to have the aesthetical education of man, because you can develop anything, and you can destroy civilization like with thermonuclear weapons right now, but you can also develop peaceful thermonuclear fusion and, reduce the propulsion time for the reaching Mars to a week. So, I think that he said, look, I can, and he had really this absolutely fantastic idea of the evolution of civilization, of life on Earth. He wanted to build a city on Moon, he wanted to build cities on Mars. But he was absolutely convinced that the education of the person, the humanist education of the person, was the most important challenge. And I think that is where we have the biggest crisis. Because the idea that people should strive to be beautiful souls is no longer an ideal. If you go to a class of young children today and ask them, have you thought about doing something for the beauty of your soul? They probably think you are crazy. If you ask them, did you go to the McFit or some other place to get mookies, to get big muscles, then people are absolutely interested in that. So I think that the idea of you have to absolutely work on your mind. You have to work on the beauty of your soul. You have to educate your emotions through great classical art. That this is something which every great scientist knows. This is why Einstein played the violin before he went into his studies. You have to have that mindset which is uniquely tuning your capability so that you can think creatively. And you have to clean the computer, so to speak, of everything which disturbs that. If you have habits which are bad, try to get rid of them as quickly as possible. People throw their life away so quickly, rather than thinking that life is very short. And you have to really have a plan all the time. How do you get to become a creative person? And Kraft Erika unified that, and to meet such people is really, for me, the one of the most beautiful things of my life is that because of the work with my husband, I had the fortune to meet some of the best people on the planet. The most creative, like Norbert Breinin, or there are so many. Some of the great, outstanding state leaders like Indira Gandhi, or people who have devoted their life to the purpose of bringing mankind forward. And some people have the misery that they never in their whole life met one single soul who touched that divine spirit in them. And, then they do their thing and eventually they die, and what was it all about? So I think that what we have to do is really, and I thought about it a lot, why is Lynn focusing so much on this question of creativity? Sometimes you say, why is he discussing the question of getting rid of sense certainty? Don't we have an urgent World War III question to talk about? But I think it's very clear that, he knows that if we don't evoke this love for creativity in people, then, they are still slaves of the oligarchy. And I think that I would really like people to take that message out of this conference, to start really a new life for yourself. Just say, I have now the time to redefine the purpose of my life and how I go about things. And, plunge into classical music, start to read poetry, try to write a poem. Why not? You will find that it is a tremendous challenge to write a poem which fulfills the criteria of a classical poem, because you cannot make a soap opera, you cannot make a small talk, you cannot just keep adding rhymes without, rhythm and rhyme, so to speak. But you have to have a poetical idea, and that idea has to be developed, it has to be thoroughly composed, and it has to be ended, so that the metaphor of the poem is leading you beyond prose. Because otherwise you can write prose. And to do that as a challenge, or try to write a composition in music, that's the same thing. You have to somehow push the envelope of your mind. And it has to be necessary, it cannot be arbitrary, but it has to be something which is necessary. Because that's also something which people forget, that necessity and passion and freedom are one and the same thing. Freedom is not outside of necessity. Otherwise you have anarchy. But to do what is necessary with the joy that you are, doing what mankind requires, that makes you free. And these are thoughts which you have to think through, and then once you have thought it through, and you can come to the conclusion that you will devote your life to be part of the solution at a point where it's not guaranteed that mankind will make it. I don't want to take that pressure away from you because, while we have not talked about it today so much, but, the Russians have responded extremely sharp to the deployment of the Patriots. They basically said this is the purpose, to have a no-fly zone in Syria. Now the stupid idiots want to add AVAX. These are these military systems basically to accompany And, it's a military deployment for World War III. So that is the pressure under which we are discussing these ideas. And I think that is something you should take home with you and then make a reflection what you want to do about it.